Welcome to the third annual Halloween special, and here to start off with A Quiet Place, directed by John Kransinski and stars him and Emily Blunt. So this film tells the story of a family that is trying to survive a world that's being taken over by these creatures. They are blind and they're supposedly indestructible and
But
are
they can
very
easily detect their
susceptible to
prey by
sound.
sound.
So they had to do their best to stay completely silent in order to survive. I originally saw the film back in 2018, and at first, when I saw the trailers, I was like, this could be pretty interesting. And the moment I saw it, I was like, good God, this was what's. I mean, why can't we get good horror films like this? This was completely original and one of the best horror films I have seen in recent years. It is not by all by means perfect or anything. I still love this movie. It's definitely on the A level for sure. And already they announced the sequel, which I was really looking forward to seeing this year, but of course, with the pandemic, they pushed it back to 2021. And speaking of delays, Hollywood had the balls to push back No Time to Die. That was my most anticipated film of the whole year. And the moment I heard about that delay, it hit me like a kick in the balls. There are so many ways that I can say, fuck you, 2020. But as much as I want to talk about that, I just want to get on with the review. The way that John Krasinski helms the movie is just, it's something, this film, is a near masterpiece. That's the best way I can describe this movie. From the acting, and there's not very much spoken dialogue because because these characters had to communicate with American Sign Language since they're doing their best to stay completely silent. And normally in like most horror films, you would have like a character who is an oblivious idiot who makes like stupid decisions, and that of course would have like some or a few characters get killed off by this killer or monster that is lurking around this area. But these are highly intelligent people, and that's something that we kind of want to see in horror films, like people that know what they're doing in horror films, because eventually we know that shit is going to possibly hit the fan. And there, and the tension, there is a lot of tension in the film. It's very suspenseful, and I'm like, all these characters I gave a shit about. These are people that you actually care for and root for throughout the entire film. There's not a single moment where I'm like, can these characters do anything right? I'm like, there's never that moment where I think about that. I'm like, I care about these people. I want them to survive. And spoiler warning, the father gets killed off, who's played by John Krasinski. And him and Emily Blunt have excellent chemistry together, and that's not surprising seeing how they are a couple in real life. And Emily Blunt in particular is fantastic throughout the entire film. And the bird scene, her character is pregnant, and the moment of she's in the bathtub trying her best to stay silent, and the instant she screams, I thought, oh shit, she's gonna die, because you have one of these creatures just slowly climbing up the stairs, and I'm like, oh shit, shit's gonna get crazy. Shit's gonna get crazy, but of course, she survives, and uh, since babies aren't really known to be quiet, they have a way to work around that certain situation. Since they have a little bunker that is soundproof, they are prepared for eventually any type of situation. Well, almost any type of situation. And I mean, this is basically a survival horror film. I mean, when you think of the term survival horror, you would expect like zombies or something like that. But this is something that's completely different. And it's something that I truly respect. And I'm glad that this film, I mean, is a horror film where the child actors are actually great. Particularly Millicent Simmonds. And given the fact that she's deaf, nevertheless, she knocked it right out of the park. And I cannot wait to see what she does in Quiet Place Part 2. This film was, I mean, it's a suspenseful and tense-filled masterpiece of a horror film. And there is, I mean, I highly recommend A Quiet Place without hesitation. There is one minor nitpick that I have with the film, though. I like the designs for the creatures, and some of the CG, I mean, some of it works in some areas, some of it doesn't. And there are some stuff that you can do with CG, some of it will look mind-blowing, and of course there are moments where you can tell some stuff looks a little bit out of place. That's only like the most minor nitpick that I'm gonna have with this film. And while the characters are doing their best to survive, there is like a few decisions where you begin to be like, there were some, you could have avoided that, but nevertheless, I really love A Quiet Place. I mean, it's not by all means perfect, but nevertheless, I'm gonna give A Quiet Place an A. Oh, it is good to be back on my channel to talk about horror films for you for this Halloween special. I'm sorry that I haven't really been doing much videos all year. I mean, I haven't really felt particularly motivated to do so, mostly because of new releases being delayed again and again. And this year, I was so excited to review the newest Candyman as well as Halloween Kills before, of course, they were delayed to next year. But nevertheless, I'm going to continue to provide reviews for older and some horror films which I think are worth talking about on this channel. I want to review at least 2 horror films that are hilariously bad. Maybe, possibly, I'm not saying that I will do it, but I want to. Sometime I want to talk about Troll 2. What can I say about that movie that hasn't already been said? It's good to be back to talk about horror films, like I said. So thank you so much as always for watching. I'm looking forward to continuing my 3rd annual Halloween special, and I'm looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new movies, of course, you know where to find me.